What a fantastic day. We've just been up in the deep space to watch this year's Ars Electronica Festival press conference, and lots of things that are on the verge of getting real here in Linz and in more than 120 places all around the world. Now we're back in the Ars Electronica Center. We're back to another episode of Inside Futurelab, and I welcome my dear friend and longtime colleague Stefan Mittlböck-Jungwirth-Fohringer. He's one of the key researcher and leading artists in the Futurelab, and you're here to tell us a little bit about your work, your approach that you're using, and a little bit about the background. Hello, Stefan. Welcome.
Hello, Andreas. Hello, everybody. Thank you, Andreas. As Andreas mentioned, I'm a key researcher at the Ars Electronica Futurelab, and my main topic, which is leading me since several years, is called Poetic System. And in the following, I would like to tell you a little bit about this topic, the Poetic Systems, and how we understand this and where this special term which we created is coming from. So the title Poetic Systems has two main parts. It's poetics and systems. Why poetics? Poetics is basically leading to the artistic approach. It's not about writing, it's not about poems, it's this poetic moment. It's pointing to art and artistic view. It tells us that we try to visualize things, to make things legible, to create things. It's about the creative act, actually. So poetic, and in the sense of art and artistic. The next main point is, of course, systems. What kind of systems do we know? What is a system? Systems are always like very special things which are not kind of legible. System theory is a really outstanding research branch, which is like founded by different fields. It's, for example, Ludwig von Bertalanffy was founding a lot of ideas in the biological system theory. Then, for example, Norbert Wiener was one of the main brains behind cybernetics, or Niklas Luhmann, which was, for example, very big researcher in the field of social systems. So we human are a system in ourselves, and we humans are surrounded by a lot of systems, natural and artificial systems. And all those artificial systems are kind of getting bigger. They're elude to us human, because we human do not have the sensory for reading them, for sensing them in all its meanings. So how can we deal with all these systems? How can we make these systems visible? How can we make them legible for us humans? For example, all those systems like mobility systems or political systems, information systems, how can we transform them into a form which are perceivable for us humans? I think the answer is art. Why art? Art had always the role of making things visible. Art gives us the possibility to transform levels of knowledge, levels of cognition, levels of perception into new levels with a poetic meaning. Art is able to make things visible which are not visible. Art is possible to make untangible things tangible and encode or decode meanings of systems or parts of systems. So if we use art to create an own system which allows us to understand parts or complex systems, then we create this kind of poetic system. That's the idea behind poetic systems, using the methodology or using art and its methodologies like artistic thinking to transfer knowledge in a different meaning to make it understandable, because art and all these poetic systems are touching us on a very aesthetic way, in an emotional, cognitive way, and that's the possibility, or that gives us the possibility to make things understandable in a very different way. Why transformation? Why the art of transformation? I think the transformation process is a very inherent, a very necessary process in all these poetic systems to make them understandable. So what is transformation? Transformation is always like toying with deconstruction and construction. How is this deconstruction meant? Deconstruction in the sense of research, of looking on a very exact special point, and it's meant in an analyzing sense. Construction in the sense of the creative act of doing, building, and in all its like feasible forms. So with this strategy, with this idea of poetic systems, Ars Electronica Futurelab tried to create several works there, especially in the conjunction of media art and architecture, almost in the last 20 years. And I would like to give you just some example of this kind of poetic systems we created there. The oldest one and first one which Ars Electronica Futurelab did was visulizes. And this kind of poetic system which we created there was like visualizing the activity in a building. It was visualizing the stress level of the building. So it was the idea behind to have a look on this very special system of a building, of an educational center in Linz. Another example was in Berlin. It's a private company building, and this poetic system was toying with the interlink of a public space and private space. It tried to create an intersection where the public space was able to come into the private space and the other way around, to visualize it, to send, so to say, pictures back to the public space. Another system which we created was called source code. It tried to visualize a whole company, a company which is just dealing with data, how to visualize this kind of systems, how to make this system legible, and the idea was also to create something which acts as a guiding system for people. And the people were able to interact, or are still able to interact with this guiding system. Another very big poetic system tried to visualize the very complex system of an airport. This, all these different systems and all, like the idea behind this project was to visualize this very imaginary space of an airport. For example, some person is coming to an airport and suddenly you're more close, for example, to New York than to the taxi driver who brought you to the airport. This is a very special project because it was dealing with an imaginary space, a space which is not existing if there is no person in this airport. But on the other hand, there's a lot of data, there's a lot of people, and this poetic system tried to bring them together and try to visualize this very special space, this very special room. Last but not least, a project based in Linz was dealing with the intersection of a building, of a financial institution, and the environment and the user, which was part in the building and interacting with this system. So I think I tried to make it a bit understandable that poetic systems tries to use art and its ideas to visualize very complex systems which are like, surrounding us humans, and which systems we are not able anymore to access them and understand them in the whole complexity.
I mean, complexity is something that really surrounds us, and we're standing here in this exhibition mainly about artificial intelligence, and I mean, giving along these artificial intelligence systems, if you call it that way, are way too complex for us to really understand, and on the other hand, then they come up with kind of astonishing results, and we humans cannot decipher anymore where these results actually come from. So thank you very much, Stefan, for this introduction. Today, those of you who know or who were following our Inside Futurelabs know that there is always the possibility to ask questions on our YouTube channel, so please comment some posts there if you want. And I already got a couple of questions in here, to be honest. So I see that there are some viewers already here, long-time viewers, so welcome all of them. So one of these questions that popped up here is, what is it about artistic expression that helps human understand those complex systems? What do you think there?
Well, art and like the artistic expression, or especially then this poetic systems, as we call it, they are able to touch us on an emotional way, and that's the reason I think why we can understand it. And art or artistic research transforms exactly this very complex systems or parts of the systems to a level which is getting legible for us humans.
But would you say that's, when a little bit following to the second question that is here, is also, are there parallels between how an artist would approach these kind of questions and a poetic system? So isn't, so to speak, a poetic system replacing the artist?
Well, not the artist, but maybe the artwork, because the poetic system is a kind of artwork, and it's an own system which is, so to say, was transforming very complex systems into a readable system. So I wouldn't say the artist, but because the artists are working together to create this kind of poetic systems.
I mean, art was always, or is always, a medium to kind of make things visual, to decode things in a lot of ways, and also way back in history. I mean, always artists were like the top scientists of their time. We maybe with kind of difference in time, we perceive them as art and not so much as scientists anymore. So would you consider your work to be here more scientific or more artistic?
Well, it's I think that exactly those topics are kind of melting together as well, and I think that exactly artistic research is a very good methodology to explain this. I think that we need to make it more complex, to create something which gives us the possibility to bring art and science together, and I think that's a key role of Ars Electronica and Ars Electronica Futurelab, of course, as well, because we need to learn from all of these parts, and we need to bring them together in exactly this poetic systems and in this kind of artworks. I wouldn't say it's art or science; it's exactly coming together.
I mean, maybe a question from my side, because my background is business administration, so I come from the figures kind of thing. Would you see systems like you were showing the SAP or the Oberbank thing there, would you perceive them also as a way to better understand your data? I mean, we know there are business intelligence systems that give you great visualizations of things like that. Would you see that it would help us to make better business decisions by using a poetic system?
It could be, of course, but it's a different question, or maybe a different approach. If the approach is how to make special business data visible, then I would say yes, it's possible, and part-wise we did it, but it was done in a very artistic way, and it was on a different level. For example, the SAP project, it gives the visitor the possibility to make SAP readable, to see, okay, that's the processes behind, and the processes are getting, so to say, a face now, and the visitor is able to interact with all these processes, and so this is a way to make it understandable.
I mean, there's a question here about the SAP project, so maybe we go back to that slide. The question is, how did the SAP project show the public space on the inside and the inside on the outside? I think maybe there's someone in Berlin that we're talking about that.
It's this one. So this project was, let's say, the building or the facade was kind of working as a membrane between the inner world and the outer world. So we had, for example, microphones installed on the facade, and the people had the possibility to shout into, and the visualization inside was triggered by all the sounds done outside. Or, for example, we had this very, I still call it very poetic approach with the pulse interface. So we were able to sense the pedestrian's heartbeat on the facade, and the heartbeat, the personal heartbeat, was transformed to the whole installation inside. So the whole building was pulsing in a personal heartbeat. So here was this kind of interaction between the building and the public.
Actually, I probably have a research for the Futurelab for the next couple of weeks. This is really, today somebody approached us saying they want to do some event outside on the Ars Electronica main deck. And of course, we're living in Corona times, so you may have to make sure your people are having correct distance. And they were asking if we have like an artificial intelligence algorithm to monitor the people on the, and then you get this traffic signs on the facade to have it red when people are too close together and stuff like that. So this is going into this direction, is it?
Indeed, yeah. That's would be a nice possibility, actually.
Yeah, so I think we definitely have to do that, because this is not fake. This is really in my inbox from today on that. So the question is, there's another question on. Thank you. One YouTube comment said that the airport project is amazing. I think this is one of our favorites, because I really like this metaphor of having this Zeitraum. I think you translate with time space in between. This kind of weird feeling that you have on an airport. As soon as you cross the security gate, you're actually closer to Bangkok, and you live in this kind of virtual airport space, transit space in the meantime.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's a very complex system. As soon as you're in, you have like a different language, there's a different health system. It's all about imagination, actually. It's really changing so many things in your personal freedom, and it was very complex. We have been dealing with all the flight data. We have learned so much about all these airports. My still favorite word is airborne, like this moment where the airplane is going up to the air, to the space, and it's called airborne, and this is so poetic. And we have worked with different artists to make all these ideas and data visible, and we created a kind of landscape which were visualized by texts from writers which have been dealing with this phenomenon of this time space. And this time space is changing all the time. It's depending on the people inside this time space, or Zeitraum, as in German. Actually, it works pretty good in German, and the English translation is, But these texts were visualizing all this, the whole landscape, which is constantly changing, depending on airplanes out there, people in this space, etc.
I mean, there are two questions about that coming in, and you partly answered them. I think one is connected to the airport project, the other to the project from the Wi-Fi that you made. Is on one hand, the airport, did you really have actual data, so real-time data? And the other question is, how did you measure the stress level of the Wi-Fi buildings? What kind of data did you access there?
Also, airport was real-time, working with real-time data, and it was also working with camera systems to track people, but of course only like in terms of positioning. And the live data were like about which airplane is starting, which airplane is coming, from where, how many people in there, and so we could assume what kind of language they might speak, and there was an influence then on this whole landscape, etc. And the landscape was like forming mountains or valleys depending on the flights, like airplane coming in or out, etc. Wi-Fi was dealing like it was almost 20 years ago, and this was the first one, the first project or poetic system which we tried to create, and there were a lot of sensors in there. There were cameras, there were microphones, there were like handrails touched to the system, so we could see, okay, what's going on in this system, like physically. And we of course had all the course starters inside there, or we still have actually, and we tried to transform them on these light columns outside to visualize, okay, it's very busy in the moment or not.
I think you also had the CO2 level in the downstairs in the parking lot and stuff like that.
Right.
I mean, for those of you, if you're in Linz, the Wi-Fi you can still visit. It's out on the Wiener Straße. The other one, SAP, can I visit that as well? Or also the airport in Vienna? I mean, if you travel, is it still running there?
Yeah, it's partly still up and running, but unfortunately, they realized that big monitor walls can also be used for advertisement, and that's the reason why parts of them are just used.
Yeah, but still, when you go through the security in the Terminals 3,
exactly,
these big walls, you still remember us.
Yeah.
Really always sad when
and Oberbank Linz, of course, is also.
This is a rather new project.
Yeah, it's a rather new project, and it's also public visible.
Yeah. In the new FA. Okay, thanks a lot for answering this YouTube question. I mean, there's another more personal thing is, and we were talking a little bit before this recording here, are there other poetic systems that don't use visualization as a medium then to transform it? So could it be like a column? Could it be a painting?
Of course,
yes,
it's not, how should I say, the art usually finds its answers, so to say, and it's not all about media art, and it's not necessarily to be a monitor or like a light or something like that. It also can be a sculpture theoretically or a painting, of course, yeah. I mean, and it was in history.
That's what I'm saying, like in history it was always more stable or more an aesthetic thing. Yeah? Another question is here, how would one approach artistic research? How do you start with it? Is it something you just sit down, or what's the Futurelab doing there? Well,
Futurelab, this basically tries to understand, and here we are very much in this transformation process, in the deconstruction. So the main point is really to understand the systems which have to be transformed into a poetic systems, and we have different methods for it. There is, for example, one method called art thinking, which gives us the chance to create this kind of vision and to understand the surrounding systems which we want to work with.
I mean, another kind of research that is done partly in the Futurelab and also here in the center is music, working with artificial intelligent music. Course, so can music be a medium for poetic systems?
Of course, it can be a medium.
So you work together with Ali Nikang there in this
Sure,
field?
Sure, yeah. So this strategy of poetic system, of course, is like flowing into the whole idea or ideas which we are like developing and trying to bring to life in Ars Electronica Futurelab.
We're slowly coming to an end, but thanks you for being here with us today and also for answering all your questions. As we are here in the exhibition about artificial intelligence, it has a purpose why we're standing here in front of anatomy of an AI system, and I think it is the very same kind of poetic approach to make a very complex system visual. What we're talking here is about these Amazon Echo Dots, these very small speakers that you might have in your smart home at home, and you just see the visual representation is, so to speak, the hardware. But there's a whole huge system, an ecosystem behind it running, and we invite you to either come here to the Ars Electronica to see Anatomy of AI, or you're free, it's also available on the internet, and dive a little bit into Anatomy of AI. So Stefan, thank you very much for being here with us today at the Inside Futurelab, and hope we see you soon, either here in the center or virtually at home. Thanks a lot and have a nice afternoon.
Have a nice afternoon.